support team is, are they understanding the language that the coach is using in terms of performance? Because if they're saying yes, yes, yes in a meeting, and then they're going on the field and doing something completely different, there is a disjoint. So how do we bring the two together? So it's very much walking alongside each other, listening to each other, communicating with each other with the video as a starting point.
Got you. Makes perfect sense in my head. And to me, it's really important that the athlete, the player, the child, the adult actually understands what is their role within the development pathway. So they got to take that by the horns in a way, and they've got to go about it. Well, if I want to become the best version of myself, if I want to become the next women's 15 or 7s in the world circuit, top of the league, or even try to have a go at winning that, then we got to be on the same side of the side. Well, I'm going to do everything I can to understand how can I get better. And yeah, I love that. I love that explanation and the way you go about that. Last question before we jump into your slides, if that's okay. Talk me through those relationships with the coaching stuff. I know you would be lucky enough to have sports scientists, coaches, team managers, all the medical area, physios, etc. How do you guys go about your exchange? How do you make those, I don't know if you call them protocols or what do you call them, but how is that that fluency around information? Obviously, because you don't want to overwhelm the player with loads of information. So how do you feed them? How do you filter things? Tell us a little bit about those conversations.
Yeah, I mean, basically we're a management team. We're not a group of individuals that dictate what goes on. So from our perspective, the coach will come, this is what he wants to achieve. And then he will discuss everything with the medical doctor. He'll discuss everything with the physio and the strength and conditioning, from the basis that if the players are not physically prepared to do the exercises, we're going to risk injury. So that is the bottom line. And then he'll come to me and he'll say, this is what I'm thinking. How relevant is it to what you know about the game? So we've adjusted body height, we've adjusted the ability to decelerate into situations, because those are the skills that we're not particularly good at. But it is, coach will say, this is what I want to achieve, and we'll say, well, coach, we can't do that now because the players are not prepared for it physically. Or we'll say, listen, coach, it's a great idea, but it doesn't mimic what is actually happening in the game. We need to tweak the drills or the games so that they are more reflective of what is actually happening. And because we're working in a women's environment, the actual game time is limited compared to men's. The analogy that I continue to use, my son is 10. He's played more rugby than most of these women have, and they're in their 25s. So wow. That's quite a frightening sort of thing. So instead of doing a lot of clinical drills that are very isolated, we're moving towards now just giving them ball in hand, letting them play games, letting them make the mistakes on the park, because that is giving them more confidence to make fewer mistakes, but be more confident when they play.
And loads of chocolate cake, that would be my advice.
I'm not sure that our conditioning guy would agree with you, but I'll try on that one, yes. Yeah.
Michelle, I'm going to leave you to share your screen, and whilst you get ready, I've got a couple of admin stuff on my side. If you don't have your camera on and you like to put it on, that'll be fantastic, so we can see each other's and it becomes a little bit more personal. Also, I'm not following the chat whatsoever. I don't even have it open. I'm going to open it now. If you guys want to share where you are connecting yourself from and what sort of environment you are involved with, if you're in a club, if you're in a grassroots, if you're in performance or whatever you are. Also, once we finish this conversation, in the next 24 hours or so, I will send you an email with a few bits and bobs there, perhaps some of the authors that we mentioned in this conversation, some resources, and also the recording of this conversation, which is going to be missing the first 4 or 5 minutes because I forgot to hit record. But you haven't missed that much. And finally, once again, invite you to join us on social media at Sud Coaching on all the social media you can imagine. South America Coaching is going around as well. If you can give us a shout on social media and show your appreciation for Michelle's time today, that'd be absolutely fantastic. Lots of messages coming through the chat right now. There's people driving, there's people doing all sorts of things. Petra in Croatia, be careful when you're driving, please, as you're hearing this conversation. Michelle, do you want to go ahead and share your screen? That'd be awesome.
Okay.
We'll leave Andrea to recover for a minute.
Okay, so what I'm going to present to you is basically a few of my thoughts and to give you an idea of the way that I construct my analysis. So to start with, you can see that my email is actually on the bottom of this slide. So if anyone wants to contact me to get hold of these resources, then please use the email at the bottom. Please spell it correctly. It's spelled the French way. Yeah, otherwise I won't get the message. So
I'll make sure, Michelle, if that's okay with you, sorry to interrupt, I'll put your email on the email that is going out to all the people that register for this conversation. Perfect.
So very simply, I wanted to define what is sports analysis. So I created this article in the Sports Science Collective, giving you a basic idea of what it is. And basically what we're trying to do is answer the question of what happened during competition. And we're looking for the how and the why. So this is the basis of analysis, is what happened, how did it happen, and why did it happen? So you can read more about that. I'll send you the PDF with that article on. But this is my thinking in terms of analysis is what are you actually looking for? So what is your ideal outcome? Now, depending on what your background is, whether you're high performance or whether you're grassroots, do you want to win or do you want to improve? What are the basics of your particular sport? And how can you assess the performance? And you see, I'm asking the questions in a vertical order, but when you get to the end, you start again. Because if you don't keep asking that question, you're going to reach the end, and that's how you're going to do things from then on forward. So it's a dynamic process that is continually questioning, what am I looking for? How do I measure it? How do I evaluate it? And then how do I monitor for changes in performance? So I've written the same thing. I've used an individual sport model and I've used a team sport model. They're asking the same questions, the same format, but obviously you're measuring different things depending on the type of sport that you're looking at. So then the next one, I've gone more specific here, and I've actually written one that specifically deals with rugby and sevens rugby. So you're having a look at the basics of the sport, defending, attacking skills, passing, running, kicking, tackling or dispossessing the opposition. You've got then tracking movement patterns, now looking more at a team perspective rather than just individuals. And then you've got the flow of the game. So one team starts with the ball, then whatever happens influences the next stage. And so you start building up a picture when you're looking at the game as to those things. You take those questions that you've got into how do you assess performance and how can you measure it. My strong advice is you start simple, because I'm imagining that most of you have really full days, and to start analyzing complex situations is going to take far too much time for the output that you'll actually get. So please start very simple, ask the most fundamental questions. Once you've got those answered, then you can take it to a more complex level. The reason for suggesting that is because if you address very simple things, you might find that they have a bigger impact on the more complex areas in performance than if you start the other way around. It's also a time thing. And you have to adjust all of these things in terms of where you are in your competition series, what resources you have available to you, and how much the players can actually absorb. So your fundamental reason for doing the analysis is to improve the performance, number one, of your individual, and number two, of your team. And if you don't get buy-in from either of those groups, then really, to be honest, I'm going home. I can add nothing if I can't get their buy-in. So you might have to take 2 steps backwards to go 1 step forward. But it's all about building the relationship based on understanding what you're trying to achieve and how you're going to go about getting there. So you can do the most simple thing with your analysis and just say, listen, we need to work on your passing skills, and just set up a video camera and have a look at them passing left and passing right, and see how they're getting on. Once they've grasped that basic skill at a stationary phase, you then get them jogging and you evaluate that same skill at a faster speed, etc., until you've got them executing at match pace with such a quality of skill execution that you're happy that when they go out on the field, they can play at any intensity they're faced with. So my feel from the past is that when we've had a look at our tackling statistics and we found out that we've missed, let's say 35% of our tackles, then what we do is we take the guys out onto the training field and we just pummel them into the tackle bags or the contact shields, whichever. Whereas if you can actually look at the videos carefully, you can find out when this scenario happened, that's when we fell down in our technique execution. So how do we now mimic that scenario? We don't need to go back to the tackles because we know they have a basic tackle skill. So we're being clever with looking at the video, deciding what situations are causing the problem, and then implementing more relevant training. And if we don't make it more relevant, how do we expect the players to be able to improve so that when they go out on the park, they're better equipped for the next situation they're faced with? So the type of feedback really is dependent on what resources you have and the relationship you've built up with your team. So this is now something that I've been developing over the last few months. And everything now is tied up with game time. It's tied up with where the events happened. So whether it was from a scrum, whether it was from a line out or whatever. And now this is a dynamic feedback panel, which the players can then get an idea where they were at certain times during the game. So are they letting themselves down, or is our game plan wrong at this particular time during the game? So let me just quickly play so you can just get a... So those are all of the attacking plays for New Zealand against Australia. This is where they started in the darker and finished in the lighter in the first half. That's now the second half. Those are the phase plays. So already we can start to see that different things happen during different times. Now we change it so that we can have a look at what happened during from the restarts, from the lineouts. And all of this is continually updating.
Wow.
So it looks amazing.
It does.
But if the players don't get any value from it, then it's really not any use. So I think also another thing that you've got to be cognizant of as a performance analyst is that you can spend many hours, even months, analyzing something that you have to actually throw away because it doesn't relate to the players. You've got a lot of knowledge now that you have to turn into a different form of communication, but it doesn't work with the players. So, you know, whilst this is flashy and it looks great, it's got a lot of information, until I've tested it with the players, I don't know whether it's going to work. So yeah, so that, you know, that's what I want to show you. You can go from your simple flow of asking your questions into producing something like this, but it doesn't matter which way you go. If it doesn't relate to the players, then it's really of no value. So those are really what I wanted to share with you. Although I just a couple, just to give you everyone else a bit of background. So this is where we're based. So we've got the swimming pool, we've got the team offices, and then on this side of the building is actually the accommodation. That's an indoor facility. So we've got about a 22 of a rugby field indoor in there. And so we can train in there. We've also got a very equipped gym with cardio equipment there. And these are so this is our outdoor training facility. It's one of the local schools. And that's the inside of the indoor facility. So we're extremely blessed with what we've got available. But it doesn't matter about all of this fancy stuff if we can't get the information across to the players. So.
Fantastic, Michelle. Thank you so much for that insight. One of the coldest swimming pools I've ever been in my life as well. So don't go in there in May or whenever we were there. No. But look, I know there will be loads of questions coming up from that. We're going to open the room in just a second. I know there will be a lot of people dribbling about the screen that you just shared in terms of your buttons and that, and I'm sure there'll be people reaching out days to come to try to pick your brains. A couple of things I wrote down as you were sharing with us. You mentioned the importance of going back to the drill, to the game, to the scenario, and making it relevant. Yeah, and I know there will be lots of coaches that are obsessed with what we normally call in Spanish the key factors, yeah, and how is the rugby ball meant to be passed, and how are we meant to tackle. So have you got any thoughts around the importance of the environment that we create around that specific, let's call it a technique for the sake of it, that we're trying to develop, and how important are the external factors that are going to alter the result of what's happening. So obviously there will be lots of cues in the game for the athlete to perceive from, and I know this is an area that you've done some research about. It's a very generic question, I'm conscious of that, but have you got any thoughts around, I don't want to call it drills to be games, I don't want to call it rehearsing versus developing, because it's a bigger debate, but any thoughts around, let's call it external cues and the importance of the environment?
So initially, you know, when we're doing any sort of training, we need to make sure that what we're asking the players can actually do, in terms of, are they conditioned to do it? Do they have the flexibility to do it? So knowing them will determine how far we can extend the exercise that we're putting them to. So basically we will assess how they develop as they're performing the drill, and we'll make it more and more complex as we go along.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yes, you do have the scenario that unless you're playing it at match intensity or equivalent, it's very difficult to replicate. But you've really got to make it an effort to make it as relevant as possible. So as many cues as you can without overloading, depending on their development stage. So what I mean by that is that I would start with a very simple drill,
Mm-hmm.
A very simple scenario that is as game related as possible, but takes allows players to become comfortable with executing a skill. I think my biggest thing is not necessarily the clinical textbook skill execution,
Mm-hmm.
as in terms of does the ball get from A to B without risking injury? If you're doing some sort of passing exercise. So the risk of injury is my first priority. Does it get there is my second one. How does that technique then break down when you put it under pressure? So it's you know, how far can you push them without their skill breaking down? So yeah, it's a very much, you've got to know your team that you're working with. You've got to know how they're responding to all of the physical exertion in addition to the gym and et cetera, that they're doing, and how all of that is playing with them, not just physiologically, but emotionally and psychologically. And when you see that the drills, the exercises are breaking down, then you've got to decide how hard to push. So if you've had a hard session before, then you probably need to back off a bit in terms of pushing them when the skill breaks down. So I'm not sure whether I'm fully answering your question, but my number one is it effective? And in joint with that is it injury inducing? And then how do we have to change it as we want to increase the intensity of the particular exercise that we're trying to do?
Yeah.
How does that match up to game speed?
Yeah, and obviously there is some background to my questions. We all see those environments where people are doing things for the sake of doing them because they've always been done that way, and we always start with the famous ABC, whatever that means. So yeah, obviously we're not going to go down that route because I think we could be here for days. But yeah, just doing things for the sake of doing them, I think is something of the past, especially with the amount of information that even your 10-year-old will have at the time of passing a rugby ball or tackling somebody. Likewise, working with tackling shields and all those bits where you guys know better than we do the fact that they give us very little feedback. And obviously, we are never going to play rugby against if somebody goes and develop that tackling shields that can play rugby, I'll be very impressed. But anyway, and I've got one more here before we open the room, Michelle. There's lots of questions now coming through the chat, which I'm actually looking at now. You show us those buttons. You show us those screens and everything you guys have access to. What's the relevance in terms of doing that live during, let's say, the World Circuits or during the next World Cup, playing against X, and the post and pre sort of competition in terms of what you guys do? Obviously, there is certain amount of things that you can do live and provide some information to the athletes there and then. But I mean, obviously, I'm assuming the majority of your work goes on pre and after. Is that right?
Yeah. So with the 15s, I haven't had an active role yet, so it's difficult to answer in terms of World Cup. Mm-hmm. But my questions are always going to be: is this going to add value to the team talk? Bearing in mind, let's say for 7s, you've got 2 minutes. So is this actually going to add value, or is this going to detract from what the coach needs to do? It's very much a psychological thing. not necessarily needing to see video. The 15s might be slightly different, but we're going to develop that relationship as we go on. So what I've done is I've created everything to produce that information live so the coach has it in the box or wherever he's sitting. However, as my relationship with him and the players develops, I'll refine it. If I have to scrap it, then I will. Mm-hmm. But overloading in a very stressful situation is not a wise thing. And it's not a case of, so I give you my feedback and I say, listen, in the scrums, we're having a shocker. Okay, the players can see that. They don't want to know we're having a shocker. They want to know how to fix it. But you can't fix it with things they haven't practiced. So in your training situations, you might have 4 or 5 different variations from a middle scrum. You have to use one of those 4 or 5 variations. You cannot create the 6th, 7th, 8th on the spur of the moment and expect them to be able to execute. So whatever changes I want to make or advise the coach to make at halftime, it's got to be highly relevant to the training that we've just done so that it doesn't detract from their concentration. They're in the moment, they know what's happening on the field. They don't want to know something's going wrong. They know that. They want to know how to fix it, but in ways that they can fix themselves, not in hypothetical situations that they never come across. So yeah, it can all be fantastic, all be done live, but is it relevant?
There we go. Fantastic. Brilliant. Thank you so much. We got just under 25 minutes to pick your brains, Michelle. And if you want to ask in Spanish, I'll translate for you. If you want to ask in English, then Michelle will start replying whilst Andrea translates on the option. A couple of things that you've already replied to. So Anibal was asking about how you guys communicate things around information stuff, and I think you've covered that in your last reflection. Mauricio in Argentina, he was asking about turnovers. How do you guys perceive turnovers? Is it everything a lost ball and we got to start again, or do you see them as opportunities where we can create some counter-attacking or create some opportunities from there? So we'll start with that one.
Language now is very much we're on attack, whether we have the ball or whether we don't. Okay. So every scenario, he's looking to put the opposition under as much pressure as possible. And he doesn't want to look at defense as an item. It's just attack without the ball, because he perceives that has a negative connotation. So for me, I mark a turnover as every time we lose the ball. Because that, then it gives us an opportunity to regain possession and attack from that position.
Got you. Thank you for that. Juan, also from Argentina in Rosario, is asking about how do you manage this winning v improving? Do they go hand in hand in terms of do we have to improve before we start winning? And you mentioned something before when we were starting the conversation. Any thoughts around that?
I think it really depends on how you're judged. So if you have a look at the scenario, we've got management in the office and we've got the coaching staff on the field. Okay. So those in the office, they will judge us by our win to lose ratio. We very much ignore the result in terms of actual numbers. We look at it in the current state that we are. We need the players to have played better in terms of understanding the game better. Mm-hmm. I think women's rugby in South Africa is not particularly professional. And you also have to incorporate the fact that we have 11 different official languages of the country. So to actually get everyone communicating in one language and understanding that a ball carrier is someone that is carrying the ball in 11 different languages. So we're keeping everything extremely simple. Our ideal at the moment is to improve our rugby at a national level. That is what our aim is. You can play an absolute stinking game and win. You can play really badly and still win. To us, we would rather have played a really good game and lose. From, you know, the learning of the game perspective, I don't think we're in a position, for example, that New Zealand, the USA, or England would be in, where winning is the number one for them, because that's where they are in world rugby standings.
You're going to develop the athlete. Fantastic. I'm gonna go to Nacho Ignacio in Bahia Blanca in Argentina. He's mentioned something in the chat which is one of my favorite words at this moment in time, which is creativity.
Yeah.
Nacho, over to you. How are you?
Goedemorgen, Michelle.
Hallo.
Hoe gaat het met jou?
Goed, dank je, met jou.
Baie goed. Baie dankie. You say a lot of things about improving and developing. When you believe you have to start to analyze in video with the young guys or with the young women, when you believe that is the perfect moment to start analyzing the video, analyzing the performance, and how you measure it in terms of improve, how you measure how you are improving your passing skills or your catching skills, don't killing creativity, start developing some small-sided games to develop skills and the decision making and the vision of the players. We have the problem to all the field occupation, to perceive the space, to attack and to defend, and in terms to create more opportunities to attack and to maybe give the opposite team the less space to damage us. So how you, when you start to analyzing and how you measure all those improvements in the young guys?
With the kids especially, they must just go and play. They must just go and figure out what to do. Because I think they're actually better teachers of the game than we are, because they come up with things that we will never have thought of. I think my questions would be, like I said before, does it cause a risk of injury? And in which case I'll give you feedback. Listen, that's really exciting. However, long term, you're going to end up with a back injury or something like that. So I think to keep creativity, which is vital, and I think it's becoming more vital again in rugby, we need to just let them play. We can record it from a perspective of giving us record of the techniques that they're using. And we can have a look then, do we need to intervene? Or maybe as they're getting older and they're getting stronger, their technique is not as good. But I would actually I want the kids to just play and have fun and not be put into boxes. So like I say, maybe from our perspective, we're looking at the video, but maybe the kids don't actually need to see it unless there's something really amazing that happened. And then it's a positive thing. Because if you start feeding back video and it's, yeah, but you didn't do this. Yeah, but this could have been better. You're already putting a negative side to making a mistake. You've got to let them just make the mistake and show them how to do better next time, but never in a negative way. So if you feel that what you're seeing from a video session, you can only portray in a negative manner, then you don't show it.
Yeah, I love it. You get me goosebumps every time you mention let them play. Yeah, and I think in some environments we forgot why those children show up to do what they do, and some of the and the adults as well. And you keep going to this repetition. You keep on going to injuries, and one of the very well-known stats going around at the moment is that. Let's take America as an example. Before children start high school in America, so 13, 14 years old, about 70% of them decide to leave competitive sports or organized sports like we call it nowadays. And two of the main factors are, one is the one you just mentioned, which is injury, and the second one is burnout. That obviously has got to do with your reflection around how we present things to young athletes. So brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that, Michelle. So thank you, Nacho, as well for your question. From one of my favorite words, we're going to go to one of my least favorite phrases. Billy in Buenos Aires in Argentina, he's asking about your role and the influence of your role in the game plan. Yeah, what people call a game plan. We got this master thing that is going to make us score points because the opposition is going to do what we think they're going to do, and we're going to score points. I'm being very cynical right now, so I'm going to stop and I'm going to leave you to reflect on that.
I think the game plan issue in our environment is a very male thing, because they've had the background, they've had the build-up. Men can take instruction without engaging emotion better than women can. So to be honest with you, I'm going to our preparation for Cape Town. We gave the players, this is what we're seeing. In the majority of situations, this is what we're expecting. But we're never saying to them, this is what they're going to do, because we can't. You know, you don't know how their preparation is going on. You've got to give the players background that they can understand, that doesn't scare them. You've got to give them background that gives them confidence that the skills that they have or they believe that they have can counter the skills or the moves or whatever the other team is doing. So it's very much, you need to know your audience, you need to know where they are. But a lot of the players at the moment, we are making our game plans, if you like, extremely minimal, because we're more concerned that they play rugby and they play the game in front of them, rather than they've got to be in a certain line. This player's got to pass to this player, but now they're not in the same order, so they panic. Play what's in front of you with the skills that we have worked on in a training session. Have the confidence to know that you're as prepared as you can be. You've just got to select the right tool for that situation. So game plan, not really convinced that we need one.
Wow, strong words. Probably my favorite reflection so far. Thank you so much for that. Thank you really for your question as well. Nacho's trying to pick you around if the Boks are going to travel to Australia or not. So we're going to leave that one. We're going to leave that one for now. I'm going to go to David. David, I believe he's in Spain. Hola David, ¿cómo estás? ¿Cuál es tu pregunta para Michelle?
Hola, ¿qué tal? Muy buenas tardes y muchas gracias. Nada, quería preguntarte si en los entretiempos sois capaces de dar información individual a jugadores aislados o si solo podéis dar cosas generales, aspectos generales.
Gracias, David. Michelle, David would like to know around how you relegate information during halftime, so during breaks, if it's 7s, or half times if it's 15s. Do you go to individual players and you try to have conversations with them? Do you get forwards and backs? Do you get the whole of the team? How do you guys try to deal with those seconds, minutes?
I would suggest that you've got players that really understand the game and that can influence it, and you've got those that can't. Those that can't be as adaptable, you leave alone, because in that 10 minutes you just don't have time to get information to them. Those influencers, those are the people that you can talk to, and you can talk very little to them to get them to do what you need to do. So I think you need to know who your, not just your playmakers, but who your influencers are. So when you're faced with a situation, you've got to make sure that that will happen irrespective of who's around you. So with the women's game, you can get really silly things going on. I'm not passing to you because you said something the other day. So you've actually got to get people that can influence without a negative connotation. So we've got one particular player, she makes me laugh every time because she has such a knack of communicating with the team. She can be as polite as anything, or she can be as crude as anything. It doesn't matter. The team seem to accept her message. So she's someone that I will speak to and say, listen, this is what I need to happen. Go make it happen. But let's say one of the, it tends to be one of the forwards in our team. I'm not generalizing for everyone, but we would tend to just say to them, okay, just calm down, focus on the role that you know you've got, and then just listen to everyone around you. So the talking from the influencers is going to affect those players.
And that, I don't know what you think, Michelle, but in my opinion, that is something very coachable in terms of the intentionality as how we're trying to develop those communication patterns and how we talk to the individual, how we provide feedback, how do we try to develop those relationships among the athletes and the coaches. Great example over there. Thank you so much. I'm conscious of the time. I'm conscious there's quite a few other bits coming through as well. Once again, you're going to be able to reach Michelle when you get this email in the next 24 hours with the recording of this and a few other bits in there as well. Tell us, Michelle, what's next for you? What are you getting ready for? What are you excited about? Hopefully, COVID will allow all these exciting things you got coming your way. But tell us a little bit about your next year or so.
Well, the next year is going to be predominantly with the 15s, preparing them for the World Cup in New Zealand. The thing that excites me is the challenge of building new relationships so that I can get the most information to the players in terms of what they need, not necessarily in terms of what I've got available, but give them what I like to say, the minimum to get the maximum from them. But building the relationship, starting again with new players, understanding how they think, how they converse with each other, how they work, so you can see the team dynamics, so you know which player you can give what to and which player you maybe need to build a better relationship with before you can actually go forward.
Fantastic. One last thing from me. Lots of the people in this call are making their first steps, are starting to try to see what's their role within that staff and how can they once again enhance that performance environment, continue to develop the players they've got. Advice is something that human beings are very good at giving, perhaps not very good at receiving, but I'm sure you got some great advice because you got some years in the back and your experience is just unreal. So enlighten us, what have you got for these guys?
Advice is keep it simple. Start with the simplest thing and exhaust that before you move on. Your time, your personal time is going to be really strained if you go in at the deep end. You've got to make sure that your ability to communicate with the people that you're working with allows you to get the information across. So building relationship, keeping it simple, and realizing that you can never end. It really, I could spend, well, I do spend hours, days, weeks, months analyzing, but keep in mind the question of why. Why am I doing this? If I teach someone how to pass so that they are technically perfect, does that actually influence the game? If you can honestly say, no, it doesn't, then why are you doing it? If you can get them so that they are passing more effectively, maybe not technically more effectively, but just in absolute terms, then that's what you want to achieve. Learn from your players. Don't come in with your ideas. You want to know, okay, so what do you want to do? What do you want to achieve? Do you want to be the best sevens player in South Africa, or do you want to be the best sevens player on the series? Those are very different goals that you set. If you're trying to push somebody with your agenda, they're not going to make it. And it's going to end up in disappointment, and you're probably going to lose the athlete. So it's slowly build relationship and keep a focus.
Love it. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon, Michele. Before I open all the mics and let everyone in the room say thank you, danke, gracias, and everything to you, just remind you once more that you are going to get all this information and the recording of this conversation in the email that you signed up with. It is likely that that email is going to go to your junk box, promotions, whatever you call it. It really depends on the filter on your email, but it is likely to end up there because it's going to go to almost 50 people that sign up for this conversation. So take that into consideration when you're looking for it in the next day or so. Also, give us a shout on social media, and please thank Michele over there as well. It would be really, really nice of you. Again, I don't have words. This has been really, really productive. I think there's lots of information, and I've got no doubt, Michele, that lots of the people on this call and beyond will be reaching out and trying to pick your brain. So again, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. There's lots of messages coming through now on the chat thanking you. But what we'll do is we'll open on the mics in 3, 2, 1. And then if we can show our appreciation to Michele, that'd be fantastic. So here we go. Thank you. See you soon, Michele.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great information.
Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Gracias. Muchas
Michele.
gracias.
Muchas gracias, Juan, también.
Gracias, Juan, a vos también.
Gracias, Juan.